As always, this is recorded, so if you miss out on anything or want to watch anything back, it will be on YouTube. Thanks for coming, everybody. Today we will be looking at some indoors clips. The first bit was meant to be Ollie, but he doesn't seem to be here yet, so I can always start it. We're going to show you some different clips, we're going to look at some tactics, and then look at what could be better, and then do a few quick rules, a few points, and then a little bit at the end. So yeah, for people who haven't played indoors, which could be a few people, this will be like a intro to it. For people who have played indoors, it will be a nice recap, and hopefully you'll learn something new as well. Cool. Moving on. To start off, Ollie's still not here, which is really sad. But I'm going to talk through some differences and some things which are more effective indoors. So we've got some clips, and if I'll play them first, and then we can I'll play them like once or twice. So just take a look at what you think is going well in these clips. There might be something that you don't think is going well, or anything which you think is really different to how you play outdoors. So yeah, I'll play it. So that's our first clip, so if I just take it back to the start. Ooh. And if anybody has any observations or any interesting things they see from this clip, type it below. Cool. So, volume off. So this clip is just it's Warwick attacking the end zone, so Warwick in white, and then Swansea in green, and it's basically just showing how much you swing the disc and just keep it moving as you're going. So the tactic that Warwick playing here, they're trying to get 2 people in the end zone and then splitting them halfway. So if we watch that happen, we've got 2, but I should have probably cleared out at this point, but I don't. But Ellen is not looking, so this person here, she's looking just to reset because the stall count's got pretty high. So we've just got people kind of in space. So indoors compared to outdoors is just very kind of free, and there's lots of different options that can happen, because you can throw overheads all the time, and there's less set structures because it's a smaller space, and you still have quite a lot of people. So we've got a reset that goes on, and then in a similar way to outdoors, we've got an upline cut, which is nice, and we see Warwick just keeping on resetting the disc. So just resetting, using an overhead to reset it there, a little pop pass. Just keeping the disc moving with really quick passes. Because there's no wind, these quick passes can work really well. Does anybody have anything to say about this last little bit of this clip? From a rules perspective, or from maybe a fouls perspective? No. So controversial is always things that happen like this, where we've got somebody who is Good on Ellen for decking him. We've got somebody in the end zone and somebody coming into the end zone, and Ellen jumps, catches the disc, and then lands in the end zone. And in the time she kind of goes into somebody. I went back a bit too far. But we see this guy isn't originally standing in that space. He kind of moves towards it, and therefore he kind of initiates the contact with Ellen, and therefore nothing was called. If instead, if in this situation, if instead this guy had already been standing here and Ellen had ran into him and jumped and like got it in the end zone, does anybody know what would happen? A little bit of a rules question. It's a turnover. Yeah, Dan's correct. So if that happens and it goes into them, it's a turnover because it's an defensive foul where the offensive player has to. The only reason why they're kind of scoring or getting the disc there is because they've fouled someone, and therefore it's a turnover, and the Swansea guy would get it on the front of the end zone. I don't know why Dan's put Oscar, but cool. Next clip. So that was just kind of an intro, showing some
Every day, Frank Jonas got him.
So what we've got going on here, I'm just going to explain this clip instead of watch it through, but we'll watch it through after I've said this. But we have two people back, so we have one person on disc and a dump, like we would do with outdoors, and then we have an ISO and then two people in the end zone. So an ISO is an isolated player, so this person has got loads of space, and with indoors it's really helpful because the thrower can throw a disc to like any of this space, and they've got so much space to kind of run onto the disc, and you can kind of really use those overheads, and then the two people in the end zone kind of just getting out the way so that these people can have more space. So this is called a 2-1-2. So you have two people, one person, and two people. And back in the day, Warwick used to play this all the time. We might play this now, but maybe we play it less so. So what they run here is called our weave. So Ellen, I don't know if she does it now, but Ellen in a weave would run up the line, bounce across to the same place that this person, which is Jonah, would do. And then Jonah would run back to here, and they keep on doing this. So if anybody kind of realizes the similarities with our like dump play, so normally for our dump, we have our dump standing here, and if we're doing a reset, the dump runs up the line, and then we have our front of stack come under. So it's basically what's happening here, but in like a more of a just three people fashion. So if we watch this clip.
So nice, Frank.
Cool. So we see those
so nice, Frank.
Triangles being made. So up the line, this person came back, and then we have two people in end zone who can just run or like change directions to kind of get the disc. You can always see how much faster indoors is to other stuff. Cool. Looking at our next clip. Right.
Lovely centre. Andy Hillman would be so proud, and Chloe Newsom. And
I might turn off the stuff of this. Cool, so we just watch through it and then we can go back and look at stuff. Cool. Whoop. So can anybody tell me what kind of tactic Warwick are playing? If you just type it, if you know. It's one of our basic ones that we play outdoors. So we have horizontal, and then the other one is vertical stack. So this Warwick here are just doing a vertical stack. Indoors is quite different because indoors is quite different because we have so much movement going on. So if we go back to the start of this clip, we have 2 people back like we normally do. We have then 3 people who are in the stack. But because 2 people and 3 people is not very many, it looks more kind of hectic. There's not more people like moving about. So we've got a cut from the back of stack. Chloe then looks to her reset and just swings it. And then it's a lot easier in indoors, just do lots of little kind of movements to get nice and free. And then an overhead into the end zone as well. Cool. Next clip.
Currently on 1. I don't think I've chosen 1.
Can anybody identify a throw that I think the pink team, the throw that the purple team over here use well? So a type of throw.
Currently on 1. I don't think I've chosen 1.
So if we go back to the start of this, if we look, we can see that the purple team loses lots of nice hammers as they go. So we see we've got a vertical stack and then using hammers to kind of create lots of space. So I think that's always something that is easy to forget if you play lots of outdoors and then go to indoors, which will probably happen at some point, hopefully, is that using hammers or overheads can make it a lot easier to open up the space on the field. Cool. Next clip.
Currently on 0. 1, 2.
And here's just an example of how if I turn off the volume, how in indoors, like some points can be very short. So lots of people really like indoors because you can score very, very quickly. So this is an example of using a hammer, like we said in the other point. These teams are really good at using a hammer. And they've used that here as well. Cool. And then for our next clip.
That's our ball play.
that was quite a long clip, but it's just kind of an example of using the space well. So if I just go back to not all the way through it, but the team in blue kind of, they're very patient on disc, and because there's 5 people only on the pitch, there's lots of people are doing more running, so everybody's kind of just moved or about to move into and out of space, and using like all the way across the pitch to make lots of space, which is how they score effectively. Cool. Next one. So if we just watch through this and then cool. So this is a great example of just working it nicely in front of the end zone, and they stay nice and patient before the end zone. So it makes it a lot easier for them to kind of get it in because they're kind of take their time. That's the end of the last one, but. So if we see, they kind of nearly get in front of the end zone here, but they don't kind of jam it in, they kind of wait, and they have someone who attacks into the end zone and then comes across, which is one of the most effective ways in indoors to score. So attacking, normally in outdoors you have people lined up in the end zone and then you kind of go from there, but and like we saw in the first clip, we had people kind of in the end zone. It was quite, the way that actually they scored in this clip is by Ellen coming up and jumping into the end zone. So it's much more effective going into the end zone and getting the disc compared to just trying to get it in the end zone compared to like obviously outdoors. So this is what happens here. We have someone who's marked out and then someone just comes into the end zone and their player can't keep up. Cool. So this is quite a quick one. So just a really good example of how picking up the disc nice and quickly can mean that, where's the start of it? Especially after the turnover, means that you can get it moving really quickly, and then it's really hard for the defense to kind of catch up. Because this moment, there's 3 offensive here, and there's kind of the defense are now out of position. There's 4 offensive players and only 2 defensive, which is going to make it way easier for these guys to score. So it's a really good idea. Just pick up the disc quickly and get going, which is what they did. It worked really well. I think this is the same clip. Yeah. Cool. So moving on, I'm going to hand over to Phoebe for a little bit more, instead of just an introduction, a little bit of an example of some zones and how to play against them.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so we're going to watch some clips of some different zones. So what we'll do is we'll play each clip, and then if you could say either what sort of zone it was, or maybe something good the zone was doing, something good that the offense was doing against the zone, anything like that, that'd be great. And then I'll talk through each zone as we see it. Just a little recap on zones in case anyone's forgotten. So in a zone, instead of man defense, when we're each marking a person, in zone defense, everyone has a set area that they're marking, and then they mark anyone who comes into that area. So you can kind of see here the green team they've set up, so they've all got their own area. But yeah, we can talk about it more after we watch the clip through.
Oh yeah, I don't know why these clips just have music on them. They're clipping it from the YouTube video. It's really weird. Cool. Should I play it again?
Yeah, okay, should we just go through it one more time and write in the chat if you have any comments? Okay. So if we just pause when we can like see them set it up properly. This zone is a little bit different to the one we normally play. So normally we play house, which is where so you'd have two people forcing, so on the handlers, and then two people in the middle and one person deep. So this is slightly different that they have one force and then two people deep instead. So this guy at the front, his job is to mark whoever's on the disc. So you'll see is this Scott, whenever Scott passes to Twarnell, the force will run across to stop it. And he's forcing up the line. So that makes it really hard for him to the Twarnell to throw the dump through. And then the idea is the rest of his team will protect. Well, they should protect that sort of throw into the center and up the line. The house is upside down. Yeah. So yeah, what you can see them doing really well is finding spaces in the zone. So this is normally one of the main ways you break through a zone is just by getting in the middle of it and just catching easy, relatively short throws. So yeah, they do that a couple of times. And then the other key thing in indoor zones is just throwing over it. I think we'll see that a couple of times in these clips. So there's no wind. That was quite an unfortunate throw. But because there's no wind, if you just knife it or hammer it over them, it's kind of hard for them to stop. So yeah, that was an unfortunate throw, but a good option. Yeah. So here, actually, we could just watch them through. Sorry.
Couple of people with GB kit on this team, although that's not GB quality really.
Can you actually not hear my PC audio? That's really
No,
sad. Oh.
we can't hear
Let's
the
go
music.
Bears. That's safe frisbee.
I would recommend watching this game just for Neil's commentary.
Very
'Cause it's hilarious.
iron. Oh, that's a knife. That is a nice throw. And he's free. Nice.
We see Bears both on defense and on offense, so you say what either of the teams are doing, or anything good that either team's doing.
Anybody more experienced know what oh, well, anybody to be honest, know what kind of the white team are doing here? The type of zone or like the type of tactic?
Okay. Oh, someone left. Okay, so I guess we can just talk about what bears are doing first, and then if it comes to anyone, what the white team are doing, feel free to put it in the chat. So this is what we were talking about earlier. This is a house zone. So you can see we have two forces, the two Dans, and so there'll be one. The person on the left will mark the disc if the disc is on the left side, and the other person will mark the other handler. Yeah, and we saw Henry running in, getting a nice D to cover the third person who's open. Do you want to pause it for a second? So, what the white team are doing is called a flood. So it's no. So yeah. So what happens in a flood is you have you'll be playing normally normal zone or man offense, and when the disc gets near the end zone, someone will call flood. So that means that you'll have one person out of the end zone who's the chase. So they'll just chase the disc around, and then everyone else is in the end zone covering that space. So it makes it really hard for them to score because the end zone is so full of people. You'll see the white team, they don't all just stay in the end zone. Some of them will come out to cover people a bit more, but mostly they're around the end zone area. So this is a really good way of playing against flood. This is the whole point of floods. It makes it really hard to throw into the end zone. But what you sort of give up by doing that is it's relatively easy to throw like these dump passes and throw to people who are outside the end zone. So we have lots of like overhead dump passes and just like being really patient on disc and not just trying to jam things into the end zone. I'm waiting for the flood to sort of be pulled out a bit, creating enough space for someone to cut through. So you can see she cuts really far under. Actually, this is earlier. Ah.
Do you want me to go later?
No.
Earlier?
No, that's fine. Just yeah, we'll just watch it through. And lots of these like really like just little passes, just like making use of whatever the other team gives you. But at this point, you can see half of the flood has kind of come out the end zone a bit to try and cover these dump throws and potentially get a D. And it means that there's only two people actually in the end zone, two defenders in the end zone. So you have Paddy who's at the front. This is another thing against floods. You try and have multiple threats. So I think this is Paddy. Is it Paddy?
This is Paddy.
So Paddy comes to the front and is a really big threat because he can just, if he just gets a catch here, that's a score. So it pulls both of the defenders onto him, meaning that Charlie is completely unmarked and can easily just run across to get a score. So that was really good teamwork on Bears. Yeah, okay, a very short clip. There's not necessarily much to say, but yeah. So this is again House by the Bears. So you can see They're the two forces at the front. So also the way house is a bit weaker in some situations than the original zone we saw, where it was 1-2-2, is it means there's only one deep player. So one way to get around a house is you can see that two of the white players go deep from the get-go, and there's only one deep player, Neil, in the end zone, and he can't cover both, so they just yeet it deep to the other person. So in this situation, it's really important that the zone is very communicative, and one of the wings, so these two people in the middle, is called back to help cover the other person. So at the moment, Dan Brown on the opposite sideline isn't, you can't really see him at the moment, but he isn't actually covering anyone. So when you're playing a zone, you need to make sure you're always marking a person. Yeah. But yeah, that was a very nice overhead. And that's very, very common in indoors against zones. Okay, next clip. Anyone have any comments? I think that was good. I think that was bad. Nice by Lara to attack the space. Sad throwaway. Yeah, that was a sad throwaway. But yeah, you're right. So Lara, who was really heads up on defense. You can. I think the person it was thrown to really doesn't attack the disc. She sort of runs away from it, like into the path. But I meant that it gave Lara an opportunity to really attack the space and get the D. So yeah, that was really good from her. The other thing I think was kind of good is the throw that was chosen was not really the best option. I think maybe it could have been, maybe if it was a hammer, that would have been nice. But I think it would have been better if they could actually get off some of these cuts into the middle that they're doing, instead of, it seems like she sort of gets to a higher stall count and just lobs it up into the air. So you can see Val is sort of like running in to cover any throws, like any short little pop passes. Yeah, sad throwaway.
Yeah, number 20 here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, it was a sad throw, but I think it raises another point on in indoors that you, as soon as there's a turnover, it's really important to be super aware. So this was good. There was a turnover, and immediately someone was going to pick up the disc, and Lara was looking to get free in the end zone, and she was super free. I mean, yeah, it was unfortunate, but it was, yeah, really heads up from Lara to make that cut. Okay. So do you want to watch it again? Does anyone want to say either what sort of zone this is, or what is the call that happens at the end? Anyone? Okay. So this is someone stall out. Woo! Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the main ways that you get turnovers actually often in floods, is just if the handler gets really transfixed on trying to just get something into the end zone, then often you'll end up having stall out. So you see she only looks to actually throw this dump pass, well, by the time it's a stall out. So yeah, that's something that's really important, is to make sure you're looking at all your options and not just tunnel visioning into the end zone. And you can see Jessie doing the hand signal for stall out, which is tapping yourself on the head. And also because the stall count is only 8 seconds in indoors, it's really important to make sure you're using your dumps and keeping the disc moving, so that's not too much time.
Did anybody say what tactic this was that Warwick are playing?
Flood, yeah. So in this situation, Jessie, who's the one who called the stall out, is the chase, and you can see her running around after the disc, and then everyone else is in the flood. So in this clip, you can see a bit more. Everyone's sort of hanging out on the end zone a bit more than in the other clip. So yeah, I think this was actually really good forcing from Jessie, because she makes sure to move around to try and stop the dump throw a bit. I mean, yeah, and so she forces this sort of loopy overhead one, and then when the person she's marking now, number 24, turns around through the dump, she's fully covering it, making her throw a knife. So that's really important, especially. So sort of another thing about working together as a team. Often, if you're forcing someone and they're like right next to the end zone, your main thoughts is, I need to stop them from throwing into the end zone. But it's about the way flood works is you sort of have to like trust that your teammates have got the end zone covered, and then you can try and stop the dump throws.
If it's an uncontested stall out, what should be the outcome of it? A rules question. Turnover. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, something really important to note that I think a lot of people forget is, if you're the person who called the stall out, you don't have to pick up the disc. So you see they put the disc down and then Jessie just walks off. A lot of people think that because you called it, you have to pick it up, but anyone can pick it up.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go quickly through some specific examples, and then we can look at some clips where maybe something went wrong, or something that could be improved. So cool. So the first question is, if the people know the indoor pool rules. So for indoor pools, the rules are slightly different than outdoor rules. So can anybody tell me what happens if someone throws a pull at you and you try and catch it, but you drop it indoors? Is it a turnover or not a turnover? I don't know how to do a poll, but if you like or dislike my comment, like my comment or not a turn. Like the comment you think it is. Not a turn. Yeah, it's not a turnover. So for indoors, if you try and catch it and you drop it, it's okay. You can just you pick it up where it lands, and that's fine. So the next question is, so we see in this clip. Ooh, I can make it. we see in this clip that the pull goes through the end zone, but it doesn't hit the floor, and then goes out the back of it. Where should this person then pick up the disc? Do people think they should pick it up and move it? Sorry, my question is, can they brick it? So when you put your hand up and then you got to bring it to a third up the pitch. So brick, or do they have to take it from the back? Take back of the end zone. Oh, then made a poll. You can react to the poll instead now. So we have A, which is the front of the end zone, B, which is brick it, C, which is the back of the end zone. Oh, we have 4 for back of the end zone. Cool. So yeah, it is the back of the end zone. So if it lands under 2 meters of height and it just goes through the end zone, then it counts as like a valid pull, and therefore they can take it from the back of the end zone, which you see this do. So it's correct, and they pick it up from there. So this clip is only very short, but it's just to illustrate the importance of having a really the pull, but also having a really good force. So if you see Scott coming down, then indoors, because it's a lot easier to throw kind of overheads, it's really important to kind of like pressure and put your hands up to get in the way. So because of that, they kind of throw a really janky throw, which is only just like caught, but everybody's kind of doing really good at pressuring it, and getting your hands nice and high is always a really good idea. Cool. This next one is also very short, but it's just an example of one cut that we can do in an end zone, which is really effective for indoors. So if we play that again, and if you watch where Phoebe goes, so Lara has this, and then we watch what Phoebe does to score. So see if I can play it slower so it's easier to see. So Phoebe cuts to one corner of the end zone, and then she turns and runs to the other corner of the end zone, which is what we call a bounce cut, and it's really effective and a great way to score. Can anybody point out any ways that Lara could have made the pass that she did a little bit less risky? So the Leeds player nearly got the disc. There's probably something that Lara could have done to make it so it wasn't as risky. Does anybody know? Any suggestions? Paddy is typing. Lead it all the way into the corner so the attacker doesn't need to stop and then let it catch up. Yeah. So if instead of throwing it kind of to like this spot here, so if we pause it, she throws it to this spot here, Lara could have thrown it all the way to this corner, so Phoebe could just run straight through it instead of slowing down. She could have thrown it a bit earlier as well, probably. So and that's like another way of doing it. So if she threw it a bit earlier, then Phoebe could have run straight and got it instead of having to slow down like she's doing here. But yeah, so it's a good type of throw and great to use in that situation. I have another quick question actually. So Lara is left-handed, and therefore this is a roll curve flick. If Lara was a right-handed person, what would be the throw that she could do that would be most effective in this situation? I don't know how to put... Oh, in doing it. Dan said scuba is always correct. Phoebe says hammer. Paddy says backhand. As you can curve it anyway, get wrecked. Okay. Um, so, yeah, so I think hammer would probably be the best one. You can throw like an IO scuba, but definitely hammer is best. So throwing a hammer, it will come. She should have her hand like overhead and then throwing it across here. And yeah, a roll curve backhand could work, but it's might be a bit tricky to get it as high. And then we have another example of just the throw that we saw earlier with Phoebe into example. So we have someone running deep and a nice roll curve flick going into the end zone. So this is basically the same cut as the bounce cut. So a super bounce cut would be into the corner and then coming across, but Charlie has done a really good job of leading it out in front for a goal. Woo woo! Cool. So Warwick are attacking this end zone, and well, if we watch this clip, and if anybody has a suggestion of, so it doesn't go very well for Warwick. Does anybody know what went wrong, or maybe something that which could be improved? Whether it's I don't know, looking for a different throw or something to do with their structure, or anything. So we'll watch through twice, and if anybody has anything, tippity tap in the Discord thing. Yeah, so Paddy says crowding the disc, most definitely. If we stop it now, we have like everybody pretty much around the disc, which makes it really easy to defend because you've got so many defenders in the same space. So that's definitely one thing which is happening, which isn't great. Does anybody have to stop them from crowding the disc? What could they do? Super dump, yeah. So in indoors we have something called where you can do what's called a super dump. So in this situation here, we have a dump who's maybe if I just go back to where he has this. So Nathan is the dump, but we can make it so we have a super dump, which just means a dump who's a very long way away, so that we don't have 5 people really close to the disc. We can put one of our Warwick players all the way up the pitch, like way off screen. And therefore they can pull their defender out of the way, so there's more space for everybody else. So yeah, that's definitely one thing. One other thing they could have done is just kind of set up a bit better in the end zone. So have more people cutting kind of into it instead of just across the end zone. And we've got quite a lot of slow jogs going on. But it was still quite a nice look to Ben. Unfortunate turnover. Cool. So we have another instance here of maybe something that could go better. So we have a throwaway on the dump, and we've looked at the dump quite a bit before. Does anybody know any ways that like the dump could go a bit better so it's not a throwaway in this situation? So I'll just replay it. Is there something that this person maybe could have done different, or maybe the person on the disc could have done different? go back to the start. Stopped closer to the disc. Yeah, that's a good point. So if we go to the at this moment Charlie is quite well. If we go a little bit back, Charlie is like quite a long way from the disc, and therefore makes it harder. Either disc should have been thrown earlier or the dump should have attacked the disc. Yeah, so a combination of both of them. So the disc there maybe could have been thrown. So if we just go back to the but the force is pretty good and jumps around and therefore makes it a bit tricky to throw that. So, and then we have Charlie getting quite static. So I don't know. So it makes it quite hard to throw to a static person, especially if there's a defender who's coming in. And yeah, as Ed said, if Charlie attacked that disc in that situation instead, then it probably wouldn't have been a turnover. Another thing that could have happened is that if we look at this situation here, Charlie comes back and runs all the way back here, but as we know from our kind of dump stuff that we've done before, once the person's kind of faked you, you want to go up the line, and we still try and do that in indoors, because it means that you can either, if you're marked out here, then you can try and get free up the line, and if Charlie instead just stood here instead of kept on running back, Paddy could have thrown what's called a space throw. So we've talked about this before. We've done stump, thrown a space throw that kind of goes over the top and then is caught by Charlie here. Cool. We just watch this through. And can anybody point out something obvious that number 2 does wrong in this clip? Apart from the throwaway. Lets his defender occupy the lane. Yeah, most definitely. So he throws it off to the dump, and then he just kind of stands in the way, which means that at this moment he's the only option. The force is forcing flick, and therefore the whole of this field just isn't kind of free. You could throw like an overhead, but in this kind of situation, we want to make sure, especially in indoors, that we make sure we clear out, just like we do in outdoors. But because there's even less space, it's even more important to leave this space here nice and free instead of getting in the way here. So he is free, but as he's the only option, which means that it kind of closes down like all of the field. All of these cuts are for nothing because he's got his defender in the way. And then he throws away, which is sad. A little bit too far. Cool. I think this is our final. What do you think could have done better clip? I don't have any sound on it anyway. Cool. So if we go back and we'll watch through that again quickly. And if anybody has any comments on why they think the white team is struggling to go forwards. So they're dumping it, and they're kind of dumping it okay. So they keep on resetting the disc here. Why do you think they're finding it struggling to kind of use this space here? So if we go back to the start of the clip, we play it a bit. Oh no, it's gonna look weird. Cool. So we start off pretty well. We have a center, and then we have someone cut from the back, which is, I think, covered. And then kind of from here, we have lots of people who do dump cuts, but kind of getting in the way. So we've got Adam here, who's kind of, he did his cut and then cut back, and therefore made himself kind of the only option. And then we have kind of this guy do a little bit too much movement, which makes it quite confusing for the thrower, and therefore it's nearly a turnover, but fortunately he gets it. And then because of that, we're now so far back that there's a lot more pressure on these throws, and kind of they've lost a bit of their structure. So we've got 3 at the back instead of having 2 and then kind of like our stack here. So it means that less people are kind of cutting, and then we end up with kind of everybody moving at once. So both of them leave at the same time, which means that this guy is kind of left row by himself. So generally in this clip, like it's just making sure that we kind of keep the structure going. Very quickly, finally, as I can see it's Audi 5, we have 2 rules things. So what do you think the call should be? And what do you think should happen next? So in this situation here, what do you guys think? So if I just play that again. Dan is typing. Foul. Yeah. Took you a long time to write that. So the call, which is called, is a foul. So if we see, she does kind of the motion of it there. So a foul is crossing your hands over one another, like she does there. And a foul is called as the person on the who threw it thought that Jessie hit her hand kind of before she released the disc, and therefore the throw wasn't as good. So if it's an uncontested foul, what happens? Kind of a recap on maybe what we did last week. So Dan's put a poll up. What's the outcome? Turnover, don't let go, lol. Goes back to the thrower on the same stool. Stool goes down by 2. Stool gets set to 0. And I assume those 2 are with this thrower. We have 6 people for D. Nice. Yeah, so the disc goes back to number 24 because it's an uncontested foul, and the stool goes back to 0. So there's a discussion, and yeah, picks it up. Nice. And then our final rules thing, which I think is really important for indoors, is what do we think this call should be? So if I just go back a little bit. Travel. Yeah. So yeah, this is a travel as she catches a disc. Whoa. As you see, her foot is still on the floor, and then she jumps, and then she lands. So if you jumped, caught the disc, and then land, it would be fine. But as she caught it and then jumped, it's called a travel. And it's always really important for indoors because you get so many people trying to jump into the end zone. So they're trying to get a disc and then jump, then catch it, and then be in the end zone, which is what she's trying to do here to kind of sneakily get in. But this is really important to like watch out for when you're playing, and loads of people like miss it. Cool. So in this situation here, a travel has been called. What should be the outcome of it? Dan, can you do a poll? Thanks. The tension is unbearable. Wow. So we have, what's the outcome? Just step back out of the end zone. It's a turnover, it's a goal. The disc goes back to the thrower. So those are our 3 options. We have 5 people saying, yeah, just steps back out of the end zone. So yeah, definitely. So normally a travel wouldn't be a stoppage. If she realised she travels, she should have just walked back out of the end zone and play just keeps on going. But because she kind of thought it was a goal, everybody stops and she comes back out the end zone. And as Jessie's there to count it in, Jessie will count in the disc and everything starts again. Cool. This goes on for quite a while. There's various people who have opinions on this, which is quite funny, because she definitely just jumped in. Where? So red.